Hey, this is TJ with SmokescreenDesign.com, and in this video I just want to uh, briefly, hopefully briefly, I tend to get long-winded, talk about this article I just came across with the Newsboys co-founder. It was a Christian band. I don't really remember listening to them when I was younger, but I do remember the name. They denounced Christianity, or this co-founder, and he says now he's an atheist. And this isn't going to be necessarily a for or against Christianity or religion, but I do want to talk about this a little bit. But I also want to talk about people always say, well, why would they lie about the flat earth? Or why would they say make up the globe earth? And people don't like to hear that. Well, one of the agendas is control. It's about controlling people. Another agenda is illusions, because the brotherhood, some people just generally use the term Masons, but there's a lot of different groups of the brotherhood out there, and that's why I like to refer to them as just a brotherhood. They like illusions. They like basically lying to people and just making people believe that something is even when it's not. And that's why there's a lot of the famous uh, illusionists or magicians, whatever you want to call them, out there. A lot of them are Freemasons. And I've got a friend, he's a former Freemason, and he's also a magician, just does tricks for children. Not that that's something that's necessarily bad, not saying anything like that, but and not that all Freemasons are into magic tricks and things like that. But so there's something in this article that I just read, and it was just really jumped out to me just to show how their agenda works. And based on this article, they're saying that, let's see here, that this guy renounced Christianity, renounced Christ, and he embraced a godless worldview. So he says, I'm now an atheist. Says that he always felt uncomfortable with the strict rules imposed by Christianity. And there are a lot of ridiculous rules in Christianity. Just so many things that it's not even biblical, and it's just kind of ridiculous. There's a lot more freedom that God gives people than there really are the rules. And it's like, for example, I live in Kansas, and I don't know if it's changed now, but it's like you can't buy alcohol on Sunday. Well, why? That's stupid. And one of the things that parts of Christianity believe is that drinking alcohol is a sin. Well, actually, the Bible says the opposite. It's not a sin to drink alcohol, and I grew up with that, being taught that alcohol was a sin, and a lot of the people teaching now were closet alcoholics. But yeah, and so this guy, he wanted just to create and play rock and roll, and a lot of Christianity believes and teaches that the only music you're allowed to play and sing is something that talks about God and Jesus. That's it. Well, I mean, God made us as creative human beings, and it really, while many teachings say to don't put God in a box, well, we all end up putting God in a box. And as we see even in the scriptures where Jesus is dealing with all the religion and men's traditions, and a lot of people in Christianity today believe that they are free from all the religiosity and men's traditions, but are actually bound heavily by them. Um, and these are just some examples that I'm sharing. I mean, even Jesus drank wine. People say, well, he didn't drink wine because it never says that in the Bible, or his wine wasn't fermented, so it wasn't alcoholic. Well, then it's just juice. It's not even really wine. I mean, I don't even want to get into all that, but just some examples. And yet, most of the attention he received was focused on how well he maintained the impossible standards of religion. And we see even Jesus was dealing with this, that men in his day had these impossible standards of religion that he said they don't keep, you can't keep, but the religious leaders want to force it on you, and it's just ridiculous. He wanted his life to be measured by music, not by his ability to resist temptation. So he left the Newsboys in 90 when he began to stray from Christianity. And this is one thing that religion does. It really does push people away because it becomes a burden on people. It's just a weight. There's just too much. I mean, you can't be free to be human. And that's like when I used to go to church and they'd be like, "Oh, how you doing, TJ?" Like, "Yeah, today's not such a great day." And then I get a speech by every single person that I say that to is, "Oh, how it doesn't matter how my day's going. It doesn't matter how I feel. It only matters that I'm victorious in God." And I'm not saying that all Christians are like that or all churches are like that, but a lot of the, especially the non-denominational, victorious, triumphant Christians tend to be like that, and it turns people into somewhat of a soulless human being, and not caring about people, but caring about a lot of the doctrines. And of course, like if you're listening to this, I'm not saying everyone's like this because um, there are just as many good people as there are as what I'm talking about, but we all deal with parts of this. So this is where it really gets interesting. He left the Newsboys in 90 when his heart began to stray from Christianity, and I guess there was a post that he wrote, I don't know. He explained how he carved out a life for himself away from church and started his own voyage of inquiry into what he believed. So he wanted to find out what really he believed. So then he explored cosmology. He was fascinated by the works of Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lawrence Krauss, Brian Cox, and Richard Dawkins. So think about these people, because when we are looking at science, we're looking at Earth, flat, globe, we're looking at the stars, the sun, the moon. We hear a lot about Brian Cox, Richard Dawkins, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And these people are moving people away from God, from a creator, leading them into a globe that is just one particle that came from an explosion, and they can prove away everything with a globe Earth. But once it comes to a Earth that is a plane, and we have a sun and a moon and the stars that rotate above us, that the plane is the center of all of life, and that even possibly that this is it. It's just Earth. These other so-called planets, as many are looking at in the night sky, people say, look up there, you can see the planets. When you look up there, you can see a light in the sky that has some sort of shape and maybe some sort of color to it or some sort of stripes, but you don't see a planet, you see a light with the shape in the sky. Now when people tell us, oh look, that's a planet, then we look up and we see, oh look, that's a planet. So by 2007, he renounced Christianity once and for all and declared himself an atheist. Now, people don't like to hear this, say, oh, they created the globe and the Big Bang explosion to deny God, to destroy God. Oh, okay, whatever, you religious fanatics. But this is exactly the path that this guy went on. And I've seen discussions with many Freemasons. I've talked to Freemasons and former Freemasons, and a lot of people leave the church and instead they go to the lodge on Sunday. Now, people say that the lodge, the Freemason lodge, it's not a religion, but I've got plenty of documentation that says that it is a religion. But people leave church and they start going to the lodge. I mean, that's kind of turning it into, sort of into the religion. And the publication for the Freemason magazine used to be called the New Age. And many Christians are familiar with the New Age religion that, these guys help push. And there's a different levels of the brotherhood. So most of the low levels, it doesn't matter if you're 32nd degree in the Scottish Rite, if you're a Master Mason or third or first or second degree in the lodge. There are so many people that are low levels. Just because you're 32nd degree doesn't mean you're high up. It just means that you memorize a lot and you pay a bunch of money because you have to pay all your different fees and your costumes and whatever. And about Christian music, some Christians know this, others don't, but I learned this many, many years ago. There was a guy who wanted to be a Christian artist, and so his uncle said, and his uncle was a Christian artist, and so he took his nephew and he said, "Here, let me show you," and he showed him these, got him to meet some of these bands or whatever. And this is something that he said, that only 1 in 10 Christian bands he toured with were actually Christians. That there are Christian bands, they're not even Christian. And this isn't just rock bands. There's so much deception around religion. I'm hoping to be able to do more talks around this topic and just show a lot of the deception that we're all just being lied about when it comes to a lot of beliefs and doctrines in Christianity, so we can get away from a lot of that stuff. But the main point of what I wanted to really show is that these guys are pushing an anti-creator, an anti-God belief, atheism. That's what they are pushing. That's what the whole globe and the Big Bang situation is. That's what it's about. Now, that's only one thing. Like I said, it's about control. It's about illusion. These guys think that, just look at all the crap that Neil deGrasse Tyson says. Think about Brian Cox. The things that these guys say. They are so full of themselves and they think that everyone else is just a bunch of dumb cattle. Bunch of useless eaters. So stupid. That's what they really think about people. And so they just laugh. They come up with this ridiculous stuff. NASA shows that the Earth is a perfect sphere. Then they're like, oh, it's not a perfect sphere, Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's an oblate spheroid. It's a pear-shaped, imperfect oblate spheroid. Because of the spin, like people say the spin is so minimal because you've got this huge object, in one rotation in 24 hours. But then you've got Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that because of the spin, that the top and the bottom of this sphere are flattening out. Well, that sounds like a pretty big force to me for this giant globe that's spinning, where it is flattening out because of the spin. But then people say, no, you wouldn't fly off because it's really not that much of a spin. It's like, yeah, make up your mind. So these people are liars, they're illusionists, and when you really let go of your belief system around this earth, and if you would really critically look at the flat earth, the globe earth, you'll see that in many cases where people say this can only work on a flat earth, this can only work on a globe earth. It can actually work on both, and that's how difficult it really is to try to use certain things to say this can only work on one or the other, because in many cases it can work on either. Like we look up at the sun, moon, and stars, we see it's moving. And many of us already know this, that I could say the earth is moving and that's why those move. Or I could say the earth is fixed, but the things move above. Or you could say, well, that sun is really 93 million miles away and it's this size. And then if you really look at a sun at that size, 93 million miles away, most likely will look like that size in our sky. I haven't tested this, but I've had this assumption, and then Rob Skiba started proving some of that with his moon to earth experiment he did. So these guys are illusionists. They're pretty smart to come up with all these ideas that work. And I think this is proof as to part of their agenda and how it works. Just get people away from God and then also act like them. Mock people who aren't as scientific and as smart as them. Mock them. Call them knob ends or knobheads or call them whatever. And then go on TV and say, don't give those flat earth people any opportunity. Well, that's all I've got to say. Just wanted to share a little bit about that, and just people always ask, well, why? And this is part of the reason why right here.